Okay, good evening, everybody. I think we're live with a strong connection. The force and the connection is strong here. Welcome to the My Left Eye live stream in our regular Sunday evening slot. Hope you're very well. Hope you're having a good weekend or a good week in general. Let us know how you're doing in the chat. As always, we're just taking a few minutes in the fondue lounge while people arrive. Please let us know how you're doing. It's great to see you tonight. H. Lukehill, good evening. Thanks a lot for joining us in the chat. Hope you're very well. We'll give it a few more minutes for a few other people to arrive. And then we'll get cracking as usual. We've got some clips and articles to go through. We were last with you on the live stream for PMQs on Wednesday, of course. If you've not seen that already, please do check it out after the stream. And as always, we'll be back on Wednesday with another PMQs live stream. So they're the two regular streams that we have at the moment. Also for channel members, you'll be able to get access to exclusive live streams coming during the week as well. Thanks a lot for your continued support on the channel. If you've not joined already, please do consider supporting us in that way. You get some great perks, including exclusive videos, live streams. You've got our static emojis to use on the chat. We've got a couple of new ones. The more members we get, the more emojis we're allowed to use on the channel. So, I'll be well, one of them I've just posted actually in the welcome message. You can see the Diane Abbott static emoji there, and lots more benefits as well for channel members. Please do check out the perks and consider supporting the channel in that way. So yeah, I'm having a good weekend. Spent some time with family. Went out for a bit last evening with a few friends. Had a good time. Not too delicate this morning. And yeah, there's been lots going on. Just about finished getting set up as wait for a few more people to arrive now. And yeah, we're going to be taking a look at the latest in Gaza. There's been another round of ceasefire talks, of course. We've had a change of Prime Minister in Ireland as well. We're going to take a quick look at that. The latest on Gaza, of course, as always, from My Left Eye. And lots more as well. Lots of clips to get through. Got a couple of comedy moments and comedy articles as well, in fact. Coming up, got some great speeches, some great protests that we're going to be looking at, including some that happened at local council meetings recently, and we're going to be analysing some MPs' performances on the news rounds through the week as well. So thanks a lot for sticking with us on My Left Eye. Just a couple of moments now, and we'll get started. Get yourself comfortable. Get yourself a nice drink. And just a quick reminder, if you are going to post in the chat, please do hit the subscribe button. 60 seconds later, you'll be able to add your comments or questions. If you've got anything that you'd like me to read out, please consider using the super chats button. I promise I will read out all of the super chats during the stream, and that's another great way to support the channel as well. If you're watching on a replay and you like what you've seen, please consider hitting the super thanks as well. So what have you been up to this week? What have you been up to over the weekend? Don't forget to show your questions and thoughts as well. And of course, part of what we'll be looking at during the stream as well will be the latest from Starmer and his band of neoliberal Thatcherites in Labour. We'll be talking about the possibilities of elections, local elections, could be coming up as well. Speculation over when the general election is going to be called. Been some interesting news with regards to new political parties as well. You might have heard protest group Just Stop Oil considering forming a political party. We'll have a little bit of a chat about that as well. And if you've not checked out some of our recent content, please do so. Had a couple of videos out during the week. Thanks a lot for your comments on those as well. It's been great to see the response. And do hit the thumbs up button as well. Really helps us out on the algorithm. And of course, as always, hit the notification bell if you want to keep up to date with the latest on the stream. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good this week. There's been shocking news as always from multiple areas, of course, but we don't let that put us off in our fight for the left. And we'll see how we can do to maybe, somehow, someday, getting a proper electable socialist government. Anyway, we'll just leave Keith for now. Have a quick dip in to see how Rachel Reeves is doing. Oh, the party's still not got going there, and that's been going on for a few weeks now. John Hurt seems to still be trapped with Rachel at their little side party there. Poor John. Right, so where to go to first? I think we'll start with a quick article, actually, if you just bear with. I've got a couple of articles bookmarked. Oh, let me see. Yeah, we'll just quickly go on to that story about the new Irish Prime Minister. Set to be one of the youngest Prime Ministers, or the youngest Prime Minister in Europe, is it? Ever? Simon Harris. Just get the article up. Go over to the screen. Just bear with while I get that up. There we go. That should be there now. Yeah. Okay, so there he is. That's Simon Harris, who's set to be the new, excuse me, new Irish Prime Minister. Leo Varadkar, of course, having stepped down during the week. And he's just 37. He's going to be Ireland's youngest Prime Minister ever. He's a government minister. He was the only candidate to seek the party leadership, the article points out as well. So he's the new leader of Fine Gael. Says it's been the honour of his life to be nominated Prime Minister. And that was quite unexpected with Leo Varadkar stepping down, I do have to say, during the week. Didn't really see that coming. He'd had some... there'd been a couple of referendums that didn't go the way that he wanted, but there were some personal reasons as well for him stepping down. So now Harris is going to be taking over. He's the Irish Further and Higher Education Minister, it says here. He had a clear run at the top job after other ministers who were viewed as potential competitors ruled themselves out. So yeah, he ran unopposed. No real shock about the outcome of that. Ministers Helen McEntee, Paschal Donohoe and Heather Humphreys were amongst those to show their support behind Harris. Bit of a dry throat today, do excuse me. I've got plenty of tea here though to wet my whistle. So this is what he said about what to expect from his leadership. He says, challenges never go away, they just change, but they can always be met if we cleave those fundamental values which has served this nation so well: hope, enterprise, equality of opportunity, integrity, security. He said those values mean everything to him, believes in public service, the power of politics to make a difference and to make people's lives better, he said. The Irish general election is due by March 2025, of course, not this March. He also hit out at Sinn Féin, the party seen as potentially Fine Gael's biggest electoral threat. Yeah, Sinn Féin have been getting politically stronger over the last couple of years and have made quite a few gains. So that will be interesting to see in about a year's time. We will, of course, already have had the UK general election by then, as well as local elections that will be coming up. Possibly the biggest cheer of the speech came, it says, after Mr Harris said the party stands for law and order and referred to the funeral of convicted police officer killer Piers Macaulay. Last week, Macaulay was jailed for 14 years for manslaughter of Detective Guarder Jerry McCabe in 1996. So that's a long time ago. That's taken quite some time to get a conviction there. He also said Fine Gael stands as a party unafraid to speak truth to power about the catastrophe we are witnessing in Gaza and to voice in no uncertain terms the moral outrage of the Irish people. They have been very outspoken about the occupation in Gaza. Of course, we've seen some tremendous protests coming from Ireland, as well as Irish MEPs who regular viewers of the live stream and our videos will know that we're very impressed by what people such as Claire Daly and Mick Wallace have had to say in the European Parliament. David, hello, thanks a lot for joining us. You got your popcorn there. Very welcome tonight. Thanks for joining us in the chat. Hope you're well. So this could be a really close cut result in the election. I think the Irish election next year. The issue of Gaza is, of course, in a lot of people's consciousness at the moment. And I think, well, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I know that there are a lot of people who will definitely consider a party's stance on Gaza when they're going into the ballot in the UK later on this year. Of course, George Galloway had recent success at the by-election in Rochdale as very much very vocal advocates of supporting a ceasefire in Gaza. And that certainly contributed to his victory there. So whether it's a political party or an independent candidate, I think that their view on Gaza certainly comes into it. We'll be going into a few more details about the latest there. Won't be reading through all this article, just a few more details about Simon Harris before we move on to the next article or clip. So it says he's set to make history as Ireland's youngest Taoiseach, obviously, taking over the top role a year younger than his predecessor did in 2017. First entered Parliament over a decade ago at the age of 24 for Wicklow. He's had a rapid rise through the party ranks, landing his first cabinet role as Health Minister 5 years later in 2016. In the role he oversaw the Republic of Ireland's vote to overturn its abortion ban and the country's cervical cancer screening scandal. He also oversaw the initial response to the COVID-19 pandemic before he was replaced when the new coalition government was formed in 2020. He's since been Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, and briefly took up the Justice portfolio. So that's Simon Harris. Quite a while off that election in Ireland, but we'll try and keep up to speed with what's happening there. Just, I think we'll nip over and check out a clip, actually, because Gaza came up there. Just a little bit about the latest. Oh dear, Rachel. Oh dear, oh dear. There she is again with Nurse Ratchet. So this is a clip of a recent interview with Jeremy Corbyn. I'm sure you've all heard of. I don't have to explain who Jeremy Corbyn is, about his stance on the Labour Friends of Israel group. Of course, this is a massive lobbying group. There are very prominent shadow cabinet members in Labour Friends of Israel, including David Lammy, obviously, Keir Starmer, is an open Zionist and supporter of Israel as well. So let's hear what former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has to say about all that. And quick plug, this comes from Declassified UK, just a quick accreditation there before the clip starts. Declassified UK.
I'm not opposed to them being friends of particular countries or places all around the world within the party. I think that's a fair part of the mosaic of democratic politics. What I am concerned about is the funding that goes with it, and the apparently very generous funding that Labour Friends of Israel gets from the, I presume, the Israeli government. And we did actually protest about the contents of the revelations by the Al Jazeera documentary. We did raise this. Interestingly, many of these allegations were then parroted against me by people in the Parliamentary Labour Party and the Friends of Israel group within the Parliamentary Labour Party. But
yeah, they did do they did do a lot to act against Corbyn. As he's pointing out as well, there's nowhere near enough transparency on things like this, how much money is being exchanged and for what it's being exchanged. And it takes a lot of investigation for these things to come into the public view, but that really shouldn't be the case. There should be a lot more transparency about funding, any kind of funding that's happening with any political party or independent, whomever it is. It should be laid bare, because you want to know who's influencing these parties. There's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of nepotism in British politics as it is, without these lobby groups as well. And of course we the other week had the situation with Frank Hester, the Tory donor, and you want to know who's putting money into political parties and what their, especially what's most important is what their remit, what their intentions are, what are they about, how are they trying to influence the party. And the absolute scandal, the coup against Jeremy Corbyn before it was two coups really. There was one before the 2017 election as well as the 2019 election. As we know, Starmer and others who were prominent in Labour at the time were complicit in that. Tom Watson, these kind of, the neoliberals, the Blairites, the Thatcherites, all acted against their own party to stop them from winning the election. And these sort of things shouldn't be allowed to happen. And the Labour Friends of Israel group was certainly complicit in that. And they've left us again with a Tory government that's just continued through austerity, turned its back on public investment. We've got a terrible economic situation as well, domestically. Homelessness crisis. We've got a climate crisis. It's just piling up, the problems, getting bigger and bigger as we go through this awful Tory government that we have now. And that's what, unfortunately, a lot of people in the Labour Party under Corbyn actually wanted. And they got what they wanted, and now they're trying to ask you for your vote, which I think is an absolute insult that they've got the neck to do that after how they hindered their own party and left us with this Conservative government.
Also got a lot of support from obviously the Palestinian people. One would assume they would support on this, and I had meetings with the Palestinian ambassador and so on, as I also met the Israeli ambassador on a number of occasions, and we then kicked back against it. But I also got, interestingly, a lot of support from people in Israel, on the left in Israel, from the Peace Movement and human rights groups in Israel. Should the party have taken more robust action against Labour Friends of Israel for its behaviour? Yes. Remember, this was at a time when many of the senior bureaucracy of the Labour Party were actively undermining me.
Yeah, as I mentioned just before, and also the CLP, the sort of, administrative, whatever, wing of Labour, were totally against him as well. They hindered Corbyn's efforts to root out any genuine anti-Semitism in the party, of which there was little to none, of course. That was all a complete scam, which we've been through a few times on the channel in various videos and streams. And they're culpable as well, not just the Parliamentary Labour Party. And it's awful to see how much the party's been compromised by people like that. It really is a tragedy, because Labour was once a great political party. It certainly was under Corbyn, the biggest political party in Europe with over 500,000 members, and they had to do something to try and stop the man who couldn't be bought, because he's a genuine socialist, a genuine caring person. He's not a careerist. He's not just in it for the money. Lowest on the expenses claimed during the expenses scandal, if you need reminding of that. Just a genuinely great caring person, and they couldn't have someone like that in charge of the company, especially not with their business interests and whatnot.
And we now discover through the leaked documents.
Oh, a quick shout out as well. Callie Eden, thanks a lot for joining us in the chat. Hope you're very well tonight. Thanks a lot for your message.
Which have been presented to the Ford inquiry, exactly what the extent of that was. And so, did we underestimate this before I became leader? Yes, we did. We did underestimate it, and that is obviously something that I think any Democratic Party needs to think about.
Yeah, in hindsight, it is clear to say that. It's good to see that Corbyn's owned up to that he acknowledges that. I'm a great admirer of Jeremy Corbyn, although I've not been a critic of his in the past, shall I say, that I think perhaps he should have done a lot more to get rid of those neoliberal Thatcherite types in Labour while he was leader. He gave a lot of the people who acted in the coup against him in 2017, he gave them a second chance, and they just continued to act against him, which was a political mistake. He should have expelled people for that. But you have to remember the political environment at the time when you start to suspend and expel members of your own party. You risk looking divided, but I think it would have been worth the risk just not to have these absolute ghouls in the party who acted against him. So maybe that was a mistake, but like I said, it's good to see him acknowledging that. At least he's under no illusions of where he did make mistakes as party leader. Although I'm a massive supporter of his, it was just on areas such as that within the sort of internal disciplinary matters within the party that I think he could have done a bit more. But of course the media were out to get him as well. He was doorstepped ever since he became the party leader, and he was certainly attacked from all areas of mainstream media, who really do have to answer for their part in helping Johnson to get over the line in the last election. Yeah, thanks for the reminder in the chat. The Labour files 1 and 2, do check those out as well. And if you've not read the Ford report as well, please do. It's all laid bare now, of course, unfortunately, after the fact. It would have been good if those details could have been published before the last election, if people actually saw the truth about what was happening in the UK. There was the Al Jazeera documentary that Corbyn mentioned there as well, so check that out, as well as the Labour files. Yeah, that's a really good documentary. And just while we're on the subject of LFI, there's a section in that documentary that features an undercover recording of someone approaching Labour at the time, around 2018, 2019, pretending to be representing Israel, and offered, sorry, I've forgotten the name of the person in Labour who was at a stall, said that they could provide £2 million to the party. That's a lot of money, but obviously they also wanted a certain amount of interest, political interest out of the £2 million, shall we say. And the Labour member appeared to sort of, open the door and, so to speak, metaphorically, and say, yeah, of course, we'd love to talk to you about this £2 million from Israel. Why not? And that's just one of the many examples in that great documentary. Just a few more words from Corbyn here before we're going to move on.
If you have officialdom in a party, you expect at the very least the best of civil servants' standards in their behaviour. We didn't get that.
No, they didn't get that indeed. Nature Albums, thanks a lot for your message. Yeah, thanks a lot. Great channel. Good luck. Hope it grows. You only subscribed recently. Whether you're a recent subscriber or you've been with us for a while, you're all very welcome here tonight. Thanks a lot for that message as well. Great to see you. Yeah, the civil service, as Corbyn was saying, played their part. They certainly did. And there were some rumours going round recently that, well, they weren't really rumours. It was pretty open. We've mentioned it a couple of times on the channel already that Galloway was being interviewed on not the Andrew Marr show, and asked for a coalition with Corbyn. Galloway and Corbyn together, they obviously agree on Gaza, disagree on a lot of issues, and Corbyn officially, politely declined that offer. But while Galloway hasn't been called to speak in Prime Minister's questions since he was elected as Labour MP, he has been in other sessions in the House, and we've just got a quick clip from one of his recent takes on Gaza, which he is, of course, always outspoken about, but this is the latest from him in the House of Commons.
We have a situation where daily, if not hourly, new and dramatic foreign policy developments are occurring. Just this day, for example, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced that this port that's being built in Gaza, with the rubble of the homes destroyed in the bombing, including the skulls and the bones of the people destroyed with the houses and lying unburied under the rubble.
Yeah, the official death toll at the moment is around 32,000, and tragically that doesn't include, as Galloway's pointed out, all of the undiscovered bodies that would be under the rubble. And it's a shame to say that some of them are probably never going to be discovered as Israel completely takes over Gaza and has started construction in some of the areas that they've already been, but that is not to say reconstruction of hospitals and universities and things like that that they've bought. It's the military sort of infrastructure that they're building, and as they've done so, they will have cleared out rubble that very sadly will probably have contained bodies that won't ever be counted, and that the actual true figure, the true death toll in this occupation, unfortunately, will probably never be known, but it's at least 32,000 that we know of, and of course most of those are made up of women and children.
That, according to Netanyahu, this port is being built for the deportation of millions of Palestinians from the territory, an act of ethnic cleansing of the foulest kind. We would have expected a statement from the Foreign Secretary in the light of such a dramatic development. But statement came there none, and could come there none. His able deputy, and I share the honourable gentleman's feelings for the Minister of State, a fine man, I've known him a very long time, he cannot possibly cope with all of this workload as effectively Lord Cameron's deputy in here.
Yeah, I'll just leave that clip there. But of course he's right. Driving an entire population out of their own country is, of course, a war crime. And if they're trying to use this port that the United States are set to construct in southern Gaza, which is supposedly to allow aid to get in. But also, as I've speculated and others have speculated, this could also be used to get natural resources, natural oil and gas, out of the country. Of course, anywhere America goes, where there are such large natural resources, they always want to take as much as they can while they're there. Just look at what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan in the early 2000s, of course. So that's just the latest example of war crimes happening in southern Gaza at the moment. I'm going to move on to a clip from John McDonnell in a second. I just want to quickly go back to Corbyn before I get too distracted. There was something that I wanted to point out. Obviously, Corbyn will be standing as an independent at the next election, as we just go back to the screen here. Just bear with me, I'll just adjust that so you can see it a bit better. There we go. Okay, from James Foster, who's pointed this article out in the Daily Fail. For those of you who aren't familiar with Paul Mason, he used to be a regional news host or co-host here in the northwest of the UK. He's since decided to get into politics, but he's a complete Starmerite, which makes him a Thatcherite, obviously. And while he previously pretended to support Corbyn ever since the 2019 election, he's been acted against Corbyn and has come up with some pretty, should we say, interesting tinfoil hat theories. But he appears to be trying to get nominated as the Labour candidate in Jeremy Corbyn's seat. He will, of course, and I'd, definitely say he'll be standing as an independent in the next election. He won't have the whip restored for Labour, and any talk of him forming a political party, I think, is for the birds at the moment. He's got his Peace and Justice project. I think his time as Labour leader was the last time we'll see him as leader of a political party, but he still wants to represent his constituents, of course, and got a great majority even in the last general election. So Paul Mason is trying to stand up against Corbyn in the election as the Labour candidate, but we're just going to go through a few of these comments here. You can see the reaction to this. Yeah, there's a sparrow outside my window with bigger balls than Paul Mason. That's a good one. He wouldn't stand a chance. He wouldn't stand a chance. I have got no doubt that Corbyn is going to retain his seat in Islington North at the next general election. Not a doubt in my mind. We're going to be keeping our eye on certain seats as we come up to the next general election. We'll be doing a lot of coverage and videos about it, of course, and I'll be streaming as the election results come in live, whether that's going to be in the next couple of months or in October, whenever it's going to be. So this is going to be one to keep your eye on, and I'll talk a little bit more about the other seats that we'll be keeping our eye on as well shortly. That comment there, you think he's the only one desperate enough to endure the humiliation. Yeah, it's... how can I describe it? It would be kamikaze. It would be kamikaze politics, I guess. Is that a good way of putting it? Anybody who would try to stand against Corbyn in North Islington really can't expect to be victorious. So whoever Starmer puts up, they're looking likely to lose the seat to Corbyn as an independent. I can see it now. Voter says, what are you going to do about the cost of living? Paul Mason says, you're a Russian troll. Yeah, pretty much. He's been very outspoken about the Russia-Ukraine conflict as well, and has come up with some pretty interesting stuff. Quite removed from facts, but still pretty interesting nonetheless. Paul Mason will never go up against Jeremy Corbyn so openly or in any seat. He's had many opportunities but prefers to snipe from the sidelines. His career is attaching himself to high-profile figures and undermining them with scoops. Tragic figure. Yeah, that's correct. This isn't confirmed, I should say. I should point out. It's just touted as Labour's best chance to unseat Corbyn, as the article in the Daily Mail points out. And he has made a few attempts before to become a Labour candidate without success. He really does want to get his nose up Starmer's behind does, or backside, whichever you prefer. Paul Mason really does. Someone had to check if it wasn't April 1st. That'd be funny if he did actually stand against Jeremy Corbyn. Oh, there's the there's the meme I was looking for. So there was this chart that was discovered that Paul Mason had constructed, attempting to link people from the left, Democratic Socialist Labour Party members around the time that Keir Starmer took over, linking them to all these other, or trying to link them round to all these other groups, and it was very hilariously conspiratorial, as well as completely, false, just absolute bullshit. So he faced quite a bit of ridicule when that came out from people on the left. How he's trying to act against Corbyn. So I just quickly wanted to point that out and show you some of the comments and reactions on Twitter. Let us know what you think in the comments as well. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight. I'll just do a quick reminder for everybody. Please subscribe, and then you'll be able to post in the chat. If you've got something you'd like me to read out, or a question or pertinent point, please do use the super chats. If you're watching on a replay and like what you've seen, please do consider hitting the super thanks button and showing support and solidarity with the channel. In that way, all contributions are greatly appreciated, and of course hit the thumbs up, notification buttons, and all of that stuff really helps us out on the algorithm. It's been great to see our membership growing recently as well. We've got just over 2.2 thousand viewers at the moment. Thanks a lot, whether you've joined us recently or you've been with us for a while. Much appreciated. And we're going to be doing another live stream special. If we can get up to 5,000 members, that's going to be the next live stream special. We did one for the 1,000 members just the other week when we passed that milestone. And thanks a lot for helping us grow as a channel and as a community as well. Great to see you all. Right, back to the clips. I did say we'd get on to John McDonnell next.
We have a...
Sorry, I just left that previous clip on. So this is McDonnell's latest 2 cents on.
The government, the minister has just said, the government is operating under the rule of law. Some of us believe that's not true anymore. We need advice as individual members, separate from government, and that's the responsibility of the Speaker.
Yeah, just a quick explanation about what this clip's about. If Israel are guilty of war crimes, which they undoubtedly are, and ourselves, the United Kingdom, are providing financial aid and directly arming them militarily, then that makes us complicit. That makes us complicit under international law for aiding and abetting war crimes directly, and it's not any spurious, long-winded, tedious link between the UK and Israel. We are directly funding and arming them, so John McDonnell's just pointing that out. And if Netanyahu ever does end up in The Hague, which he rightly should, of course, then Rishi Sunak should be right there by his side. I've got no doubt about that we are currently on the wrong side of history where it comes to that. Even though the amendment on the SNP ceasefire went through without a vote because Labour hijacked it, of course, that's nothing but a gesture, a minor gesture, as of course that amendment didn't include the official recognition of collective punishment on Palestinians. So legally and morally, we are really in the wrong place at the moment in the UK. And that's something that John McDonnell's trying to point out. He's trying to get the Speaker of the House to get some clarity on this legal matter. But frustratingly, it's a deputy speaker in this sitting, I should point out. The deputy speaker in this case really is trying to drag their feet over this and try and act as though it's a legal issue more than a parliamentary procedural issue. But where the truth's being spoken in Parliament certainly involves the Speaker and Deputy Speakers. So let's see what John McDonnell's got to say.
To ensure that we're properly advised about our responsibilities when we believe there's the potential complicity in war crime.
Point of order, John McDonnell.
And I've sat through the statement this morning and listened to the various questions that have been raised with regard to the supply of arms to Israel. It's quite clear the government is continuing to supply arms to Israel, some of which will have been used on the attacks on Gaza, some of which of those attacks have been judged to be contrary to the ICJ judgment, and they're potentially war crimes. Can I ask the Speaker there?
They are, and I'm not going to let fly, don't worry. A minor rant here. Just also want to quickly give credit to Politics Joe, who put this short clip together as well. But it makes me sick to the core to think that my tax money is being used for that. And I've seen, as I have done for the last 5 months, some absolutely graphic scenes in Gaza, scenes too graphic to share on the live stream on YouTube, things that have made me feel physically sick. And to think that our taxes are contributing towards that directly really does make my skin crawl. And I'm sure that a lot of our viewers will feel the same way about that as well. Yeah, David's just put in the chat, just quickly going back to Paul Mason. He called black people Putin's puppets when we called out the treatment of black people trying to leave Ukraine by Ukrainians. I do remember that. There was the Ukraine-Russia conflict's been going on a lot longer than the Gazan conflict, of course, and as refugees tried to move into other surrounding countries, there was, of course, a large amount of racism. I do recall that, actually, the Putin's puppets things. Disgraceful language from Paul Mason. That just goes to show you the sort of person who's welcome in the Labour Party, or could potentially be welcome in the Labour Party at the moment as well. That's an absolute disgrace. Thanks a lot for reminding us about that, David. Let's just go back to John McDonnell and this situation on the UK arming and funding Israel.
Therefore, to seek and publish legal advice on the legal responsibilities of individuals of this House in holding the government to account to prevent complicity in those war crimes, and so that we're all aware of our responsibilities and the role that we have to play as this government receives its authority from this chamber.
Well, I thank the Right Honourable gentleman for his point of order. He didn't give me notice of it, so I have not been able to perhaps seek advice on the legal point that he raises, which I am unclear on whether he is asking the Speaker to publish legal advice, which I'm not sure would be. If the Right Honourable gentleman would like.
Apologise, I couldn't give the Deputy Speaker notice because literally this statement has only just concluded and it came out of the statement itself. I'm asking for the Speaker to seek legal advice on our behalf and to publish that legal advice, because I think it's important that we all know our legal responsibilities in respect of the potential complicity of this government in war crimes.
Well,
just before we hear from the Deputy Speaker, the ICJ have been very clear about the occupation and war crimes in Gaza. As John McDonnell pointed out, it's very clear that we are still militarily contributing towards Israel. You just have to join the dots there. It doesn't really take much to see where we stand, whether the Deputy Speaker had prior notice of this point of order being put forward or not. Surely you can connect the dots and realise that the UK is complicit.
my initial response would be that obviously the Minister has come here, has answered a number of questions with regard to the issues that he raises. I feel that he is indicating that he perhaps may be able to help me out a little in terms of legal advice. But I feel it feels highly unusual for the Speaker to seek legal advice on an issue affecting the government, because the government obviously gets its own legal advice. But perhaps we could hear from the Minister before we go any further.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy. Further to that point of order, the Right Honourable Gentleman is an extremely experienced member of this House, and he is seeking to continue the subject of the urgent question ingeniously in what he says. He knows perfectly well, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the government operates under a rule of law when it comes to arms sales, the arms regime, the work of the Arms Inspection Committee. Those are matters all determined by the law of the land. And when it comes to international humanitarian law, the position is precisely the same. The government takes advice from the law officers who are charged with these matters and who advise the government, and the government acts upon that advice.
Well, whoever they are, they're probably not very good at the jobs. As I pointed out, it doesn't take much to connect the dots and realise that we are complicit in that. That was such a dismissive answer. Do we expect anything less from the Tories? It's disappointing to see the attendance with this matter being raised as well in the House of Commons, as you can see there. John McDonnell is one of the few decent Labour MPs that we have left. You could probably count them, on your hands. They're so few these days. Also including people such as Zara Sultana, Aspana Begum, Diane Abbott, of course, but although she's had the whip removed as well, Dawn Butler, but you certainly wouldn't see someone like Rachel Reeves standing up and pointing out what John McDonnell is, or Keir Starmer, Annalise Dodds, and obviously I know it may or may not involve their specific department or shadow department in Labour's case, but they should certainly be there to say the same things that John McDonnell is saying, but they are, of course, absent.
That, if I may just say, that is rather the point I was trying to make, but obviously the Minister, who is, I'm sure, very often working with legal advisors, was able to answer it much more coherently than I was. So I'm not sure we can pursue this much further, but I will let the Right Honourable Gentleman have one more go. But I think we've sort of reached the end of the questioning after this.
I'm not seeking to extend the debate at all. This is an incredibly serious point. The Minister has just said the government is operating under the rule of law. Some of us believe that's not true anymore because of the way the ICJ judgment was phrased. And therefore we need advice as individual members separate from government, and that's the responsibility of the Speaker, to ensure that we're properly advised about our responsibilities when we believe there's the potential complicity in war crime. All I'm seeking is that advice is sought and published.
Well, as I say, I think, first of all, the government performs within the legal advice that it is receiving, not least from the Attorney General. There are separate, obviously, legal proceedings going through the ICG, and I don't think it would be for members of this House to be interfering in that process either. The Right Honourable Gentleman will know that obviously individual members of the have the right to seek legal advice. Obviously his comments will have been heard, and if there is anything further to be added to them, I know that the clerks will advise us whether we should return to this, but I think it would be highly unusual, the Right Honourable Gentleman's request in terms of specific legal advice to the Speaker. If there is anything I need to add to that, I can assure the Right Honourable Gentleman I will come back to him.
Okay, so he tried his best to get something out of the speaker though, without much luck, as well as the usual dismissive response from the Tory MP there, of course. But that's a perfectly legitimate point from John McDonnell. Will of course keep you up to speed with the legal ramifications on this occupation in Gaza. We'll quickly nip over to a clip about the ceasefire now. Just bear with me. There was another round of talks this week, though unfortunately it came to nothing. I'm not sure if you can just bear with me. I'm not sure if that's coming up. No, 1 second. It's supposed to be there. There we go. Sorry about that. Quickly go through some of the details about that. Usually it's the United States who sort of veto and block these calls for a ceasefire in UN votes. Although this time it's their motion, and Russia and China have blocked calls for an immediate ceasefire that have come from America on this occasion. And we'll just quickly go into the reasons that Russia and China have given about that. But it's the latest sort of disappointment, as it were, that we unfortunately don't seem to be getting anywhere closer to a ceasefire.
Let's start in New York, where the UN Security Council has voted against a US draft resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza linked to the release of hostages. Russia and China were amongst 3 countries that vetoed the US resolution. It was the first time the US had supported calls for an immediate ceasefire in the region, having previously used its own veto to block such demands at the UN. Well, this is how the US ambassador to the UN responded to China and Russia's veto.
Russia and China still could not bring itself to condemn Hamas's terrorist attacks on October 7th. Can we just pause on that for a moment? Russia and China refuses to condemn Hamas for burning people alive, for gunning down innocent.
This is the actual lady who's voted to block and veto previous votes as well, Linda Thomas-Greenfield. I think it's completely hypocritical for her to say this, having previously done so. And although the US appear to have changed their stance on this, putting forward the motion for the ceasefire, it's the actual details of the ceasefire deal that Russia and China have rejected. They've also pointed out the hypocrisy of the United States of America putting forward this motion, as I said, as Linda Thomas-Greenfield has previously vetoed it on many occasions as well, not just once.
Innocent civilians at a concert, for raping women and girls, for taking hundreds of people hostage. This was the deadliest single attack on Jews since the Holocaust. And a permanent member of this council can't even condemn it. I'm sorry, it's really outrageous, and it's below the dignity of this body.
That was the US representative there to the UN just speaking a short time ago. Well, we know that Mr. Netanyahu has been having talks with Antony Blinken, and he has said in a statement to after those talks, which has only recently broken up, we think, Mr. Netanyahu said we talking about going into Rafah. He said, Mr. Netanyahu said, I told him I hope we will do it with the support of the US, but if we have to, we will do it alone. We know that, of course, the US and other allies of Israel have been urging caution on that particular move. Well, let's speak to Mark Lowen, who is in Jerusalem for us. Mark, just first of all, on the UN resolution being vetoed initially, what is the impact of that, if any? And we also know that there is another draft resolution that's doing the rounds at the moment.
Well, it means that the resolution, of course, was not passed at the UN Security Council, Gita, because Russia and China have veto-wielding power. Now, Russia's UN ambassador said that it was a false declaration of a ceasefire, false call for a ceasefire, because the text that was supported by the US linked a ceasefire to the immediate release of hostages. So in effect was supporting Israel's negotiating position in these talks in Doha, which are still ongoing, ceasefire talks, because Israel's position is that there can only be any ceasefire if the hostages, if Israeli hostages held by Hamas are immediately released. Now, even though the US basically was sort of in line with Israel's negotiating position, it was a harder tone than the US has used before. As you noted in your introduction, previously the US had vetoed 3 previous calls for an immediate ceasefire, and they'd never used those words, immediate cessation of hostilities. So, you know, the US was going further than they ever had, but still it was blocked by Russia, China, and Algeria. So it doesn't pass. There is a second ceasefire that draft that is going to be circulated. We don't know exactly how hard that will go. But all through this conflict, really, the UN Security Council has been paralysed by differing positions on the war and on Israel's position in the war and Israel's offensive. You know, we've seen the US harden.
Well, he's summing it up quite well there. This is the reason that Russia and China have blocked the deal. It's obviously towing the Israel side of negotiations via American support, and that's what Russia and China have been dead set against. There have been previous deals on the table that have included an exchange of hostages. Most recently, the most recent talks before this, Israel didn't even attend. They made very overambitious, to say the least, clause within the ceasefire deal that they'd have to know the exact names and locations of the remaining 150 hostages. Hamas responded to that by pointing out that that was impossible due to the situation in Gaza at the moment. Obviously, with the continued bombardments, that's very difficult to sort of quantify and account for. And that was Israel's excuse for not even turning up at the last round of negotiations. So everybody's been doing it. They've been vetoing deals. They've not been showing up to talks. And now the latest in this is from Russia and China. But do you think that these are legitimate reasons for this ceasefire deal being vetoed? Let us know in the chat. As well, of course, please do hit the thumbs up and notification bells while you're over there as well.
Position growing increasingly exasperated with Israel, but even that, it seems, has not been enough to pass the deadlock of the UN Security Council.
And Mark, in terms of the talks that happened on the ground today, we've seen the Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, coming out of those talks and saying that he still feels that they will have to go into Rafah in order to defeat Hamas, and if they have to do that without the support of the US, they would still go ahead. Do we have any more information as to how those talks went?
All we know is that they lasted about 40 minutes, that they discussed Rafah, as you say, which is in the south of Gaza, where more than 1 million people are now sheltering, and where the Israelis are determined to send in the military in defiance of international warnings about the atrocities that could ensue. They also talked about the urgent need to deliver, or from Blinken's point of view, an urgent need to ramp up humanitarian aid into Gaza amidst those dire warnings that we had earlier in the week about famine and catastrophic food insecurity facing the vast majority of people in Gaza. The US has...
Yeah, you may already be aware, if you've checked out some of our previous content, that Blinken, as the US Secretary of State, announced that for the first time in history, it's been declared that the entirety, 100% of a country's population is at risk from famine. That's never happened before in history, and it just goes to emphasise and highlight the scale of this humanitarian crisis in Palestine.
Summoned an Israeli delegation to Washington next week to discuss Rafah. The US position is that Israel does not need to go into Rafah Rafah in order to destroy Hamas. There are alternatives, namely to cut off completely the smuggling routes coming from Egypt across the crossing into Gaza and feeding Hamas. But whether Israel buys that, we don't know. And at the same time as Israel is, Netanyahu is repeating almost every day his intention to go into Rafah, the ceasefire talks are continuing in Doha with the head of Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, there in Qatar, with the head of the CIA and Egyptian and Qatari negotiators. So Israel appears to be kind of keeping its options open, playing to different audiences. But clearly, if the Israeli military does go into Rafah, which probably could take quite a few weeks to organise, given the number of people who would need to be evacuated first, that would exacerbate the already very, very fractious relationship between the US and Israel.
And Mark, a difficult question potentially for you to answer from where you are at the moment, so forgive me for asking, but do we have any real information about whether representatives of Hamas or, via any other Palestinian groupings are involved in these talks, these ceasefire talks? They are
in effect represented by the Qataris because their political wing of Hamas has been living in Qatar. Basically, the sort of political representatives of Hamas have lived in Qatar. So Qatar actually plays a double or an important go-between between the Israelis and Hamas, because even though they don't have official relations with Israel, they do talk to the Israelis, but they also give residency to top Hamas officials. Now, what we understand is that in order for an agreement on a ceasefire to be reached, they would need to actually have the green light from the head of Hamas in Gaza, who is Yahya Sinwar, and he is Israel's most wanted. He is believed to be the mastermind behind the 7th of October attacks. We don't know where he is. Probably in a tunnel somewhere, possibly surrounded by Israeli hostages. But given the communications blackout there, given the fact that he's trying to evade Israeli firepower, it's quite difficult, of course, for the Qataris or indeed the Egyptians to try to negotiate with him, or not necessarily negotiate with him, but to actually get his, the words from the horse's mouth, if you like. So that is one of the hold-ups in the talks. And if there is to be a breakthrough in those talks, that would need to come from Hamas itself, not just from the Qataris and the Egyptians. So that is one of the reasons, Gita, why we are not expecting a breakthrough, today or tomorrow. It could take days, even weeks, for this to really move.
Now, let's start.
Well, yeah, they're pretty much the latest details. We'll keep you posted on this situation. Of course, the talks are continuing to happen, and throughout the week we'll see what happens in the latest round of negotiations. The next thing I want to show you is kind of a tale of two councils, as it were. And I've got two examples of local council meetings that have happened during the week, and at one of them a Palestinian was allowed to speak, and I believe these are both Labour-run councils. At the other council meeting, unfortunately, things didn't go very well. There was a request from people in the public gallery to hold a minute or 2 minutes silence for victims of the occupation, which was denied. And then there proceeded to be quite a lot of back and forth between the public gallery and the councillors before the Labour councillors decided to adjourn the session to just get up and walk away. But then they tried to have the people in the public gallery arrested. So we're going to have a quick look at that. We're going to start with the clip I mentioned. And this is some personal testimony from Islam Alashi, who was at this Labour Council meeting.
Thank you for letting me speak with you today. I am Islam Alashi. I was married in this beautiful Birkenhead town hall with my wonderful husband, Faiz. We live with our 2 gorgeous kids in Wallasey. I find myself thousands of miles away from my sister Amira, my niece, and my 70-year-old father. They are living in a tent in Rafah right now, hoping Israeli troops don't enter the city and kill more people. My grandparents are from Beersheba. I grew up in Gaza. Last September, I went to visit my ill dad and I became trapped in the war. Since October the 7th, I experienced the worst days in my life. Being so far from my kids, seeing death many times in front of my eyes, feeling scared and terrified, being made homeless and forced to flee, taking only what we can carry. My home and the neighborhood in which we lived was destroyed by F-35 warplanes. Me and my family were displaced 4 times in 3 months. I finally left Gaza on the 3rd of December. I can't forget the hard moment when I was forced to leave Gaza without my family, leaving them in the war with no help, with no support from anybody. I was crying when I saw the lights in Egypt for the first time in the last 60 days. When I moved to the hotel, there was water in the tap, light in the room, clean water in clean bottles to drink, and a bed to sleep on. I thought that I finally came out to heaven. I remember when we were forced to move, I have witnessed death countless times, yet we were able to make it to Rafah miraculously. We walked south for 13 kilometers on foot on the hot sand with thousands of kids and elderly people. During this forced evacuation, I saw by my own eyes kids being killed by soldiers, forcing their mothers to continue walking to the south and not to look behind. That was the first time I saw Israel soldiers standing in our land, holding weapons and killing civilian people with no mercy. I will never forget it. Over 30,000 people have been killed. Many more are starving to death. Even the International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to stop killing Palestinians in Gaza. I am therefore asking all elected councillors, every single one of you, please vote for immediate, bilateral, long-lasting ceasefire in Gaza. Please help my family survive this war. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very powerful testimony there. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, just wanted to let that play through. And when a crisis gets to a situation where all people can dream of is a clean glass of water, it really does go to show how bad this humanitarian crisis is. And those descriptions from Islam Al-Ashi there really do ring home just how bad the situation is. Her words were welcomed at that council meeting in Birkenhead. Unfortunately, at another council meeting during the week in Sandwell, things didn't quite go the same way. As I just described before that clip, all that was being asked for was moments silence and moments recognition for the victims in Gaza, which was denied, and then it all descended into what you're about to see, this back and forth. And then with the Labour Council trying to get the people in the public gallery arrested.
Now move on to the orderly full council meeting.
Shame on you! We just spent a minute in silence for your friend because we are all good people who care about somebody who has died. My children are here. Children that look like these but with brown skin are all dying. Can we not have 2 minutes silence for nearly 40,000 dead people? There are children here looking at you as councillors. Do you not want to show them that you can wait a minute and have a minute's silence for those people who are dead, buried under the rubble? Can we please have a minute's silence for those people in Gaza? All those in favour? Aye.
Thank you, members, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to those present in the public gallery. Thank you for your comments, which are duly noted by all members present and respectfully noted by everyone present in this chamber. However, Council is here to convene and deal with the published business on the agenda, so your comments are noted and that opportunity has been provided as you've just spoken. However, On behalf of the Mayor and Council, I do have to remind you that we do need to continue business now.
One
Please
minute.
ask
One
you take a
minute.
seat
You can't give
and look
one
at the
minute.
short proceedings. So again, the Council.
This is the thing, they just wanted a minute or two's silence for recognition, which would be a lot less time than this back and forth, this exchange, and them explaining why they're not holding the minute or 2 minute silence. If it takes him 5 minutes to explain that, then you may as well just have the moment's silence. It's respectful, and then you can move on with the proceedings. You know, the denial of that has descended this into a complete farce. Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. Pike Bishop, for joining us in the chat tonight. I hope you're well. You're from Birkenhead, so yeah, the previous clip was from your local area, and yeah, this one is Sandwell. This is the site of the oppression, not in Birkenhead. Just to remind everybody about that. And let's continue with the clip.
Has been warning to this process, so this is the first warning. So
Children, I'm really sorry, children, for you to witness this, that these people can't give 1 minute. They do care more about those people than these people in power do.
Can you explain why this could not be debated?
Do you want to explain
in our
to my
local
children?
Again, I have issued a warning on behalf of full council. It's the second warning. You are continuing to disrupt the transaction business.
Nobody down there. Anybody raise your hand if you support having a minute
Again, the
silence?
members will never want to comment, but that's not a matter of transacting public business, nor does that lie within the scope and powers of this council. This is the final warning.
It works for Ukraine.
You passed a statement on Ukraine within 5 days, and so did other councils. You are hiding behind words. This is, and you are, an absolute disgrace.
You've got to keep this to someone asking you I'm really shocked.
So if you heard that comment just there about having to keep Mr. Starmer happy, I think that's certainly the case. Yeah, good point. That was just sort of mixed into some of those outbursts there. They've got to keep Starmer happy, these councillors, otherwise they'll be out on the ear.
There's three children here watching you, and you won't have 1 minute. 1 minute.
Police are on the way. Well, that's a result, isn't it, Ray? You've got the police coming because you can't have a minute with all the people who died in Gaza because you're all so facile and weak and cowardly that you can't stand against the government of our country and the leader of the opposition who apparently think it's all right not to call what's happening a genocide and not to call for a ceasefire. You are, whatever you describe yourselves, you are a disgrace.
Can you explain what is more extreme than a genocide? Can any of you explain a more extreme act than genocide? No, you can't. You can't.
To respect the beginning of Ramadan, so please, members may adjourn for
Absolute hypocrites.
I would suggest that please.
Shame on you!
Absolute hypocrites.
Shame on you!
Shame on you!
Now they're just walking out. Here's the police.
Shame on you!
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Free! Palestine! Free! Palestine! Free Palestine!
Yeah, that's very bold, and that's what we need to see. And I've seen national protests. I've been on national protests as well as local protests outside of council halls, etc. And the solidarity there is amazing. The attendance there is always very compassionate, very loving, very caring, very peaceful, I should point out as well. And these protesters who've gone into the public gallery in Sandwell, I think they've done a really, really good job there at highlighting that, especially the hypocrisy of how quick councils and other public offices were so quick to get behind Ukraine when Russia first invaded Ukraine. But 5 months into these escalations in Gaza, and they won't even allow 2 minutes silence just to represent 32,000 that we know of, 32,000 victims, deaths that have happened. And H. Lucas's perfectly right, as well as David. How can they deny a moment of silence? That's so heartless. Yeah, you're absolutely right there, David. And another comment as well from H. Lucas: boycott BBC, Talk TV, and the rest of cable news. Well, fortunately, Talk TV are going to be coming off of television and moving to internet only. GB News have also reported record losses as well, so they could be heading the same way. The BBC have also been criticised for their for towing the Israeli line and allowing some extremely nefarious people onto platforms on their shows, especially like we've seen from our previous clips as well, such as Question Time, where Melanie Phillips was allowed onto the panel to spout some extremely false shite-hawk propaganda on behalf of Israel, trying to claim that there's a lot of food getting through, trying to claim that there have been footages of streets laden with luscious fresh fruits and all kinds of amenities as well, which was of course completely false. And the audience, other members on the panel including Stephen Flynn, just weren't swallowing that. So please do check out our content on that as well. Great protest. We need to see more of this. We need to see more of this. We need to see more recognition from public bodies, both at a national and local level, as we've seen. Because as we've discussed tonight on the live stream, there is this legal issue of complicity. But unfortunately, certain members in Labour aren't speaking the truth. They're either being dumb or playing dumb. This council panel is certainly an example of that, but we've also seen Emily Thornberry, who made an appearance on the news rounds recently, and this question was put to her. Bearing in mind she comes from a legal background, similar to Keir Starmer, and we all remember the clip of Starmer being asked if denying food and water was a war crime, to which he responded that he thought that Israel should have the right to do that. And similarly, in this clip, you're going to see Emily Thornberry just sort of feign a bout of amnesia or a lack of knowledge on the legality surrounding this occupation. Unfortunately, this is what we're stuck with Labour. Emily appeared to previously be a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, but since Starmer took over, she has, of course, been worried about her career. She's maintained a strong position in the Labour Party and has told the neoliberal Starmerite line. But let's see what she had to say.
Is that you're very used to protests, I'm afraid. And it's kind of odd because I don't think that Conservative politicians get the same protests. I don't quite know what that means. I have Just Stop Oil outside my house. I have Gaza protests pretty much everywhere that I go. I assumed it was Gaza, and then I saw the orange. Oh, right, it's Just Stop Oil. And the worst of it is that one becomes kind of slightly, you just get hardened to it. And actually the messages are important so long as they're not personal. And I think that if they're personal, then actually it's part of a form of intimidation, which actually undermines our democracy. I'm quite happy to argue the issues. I am not prepared to be told that I'm responsible for the murder of babies in Gaza or that I am personally responsible for boiling the planet. And I'm not.
You'd certainly contribute towards it. No one's trying to say that you are alone solely are responsible for those things, Emily. Just quickly about the Just Appall protests that have been going on. They've been calling for Labour members, shadow MPs, to veto the new fossil fuel licences should they be elected after the next election. That's what those protests have been about. And there have been a couple of demonstrations outside MPs' houses, including Keir Starmer. You know, that's perfectly legitimate. And the same with Gaza. And the votes in there. Emily Thornberry, I will just very quickly check how she voted on the ceasefire in Gaza. I'm pretty sure that she abstained last November, if you'll just bear with me for a moment. But again, this is why MPs are subject to protest, and that's legitimate. Yeah, that's perfectly legitimate. These are peaceful protests. No one's been violent. There aren't any intimidatory threats being made towards people like Emily Thornberry, and they have to be held to account for the decisions that they make and the whether they vote or abstain. In this case, on these major issues, such as the war in Gaza and the environment. So, just bear with me while I confirm that. I'm almost 100% certain that Emily Thornberry either voted against the ceasefire or abstained. Yeah, that's right. So that's the reason. And if she can't take it, then that's just part of the job. That's just part of the job, and she seems to think that she's personally being blamed for all of that. Obviously, it's not just on her, but she's contributing towards it, as well as a lot of other Labour MPs. So these are legitimate protests.
Having it.
You could see some of the themes that we face from the climate crisis while she's getting that round of applause from this little neoliberal gathering, wherever it was. The clips from ITV News, as you can see there. These scenes are from London. Sorry, they may not be from London. They're from the UK. They might not be from London specifically, but several homes burned down just because of how extreme the weather was. It was the first time we reached 40 degrees, of course, in the UK, and that wasn't supposed to happen for some time. All of these extreme weather events are happening, and all these new temperature milestones being reached a lot sooner than a lot of the models expected. Thornberry wants to turn her back on that, as well as our complicity in this genocide in Gaza. Just going to head over to a couple of comments. We'll just go back to the chat. Beesmonk, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Welcome back. Welcome back to the stream. Hope you're well. And like David points out, yeah, Emily is certainly complicit, whether it's on these issues of climate or environment. Hitch Lucal says the tooth fairy's to blame, madame. Yeah, it must be the tooth fairy. If it's not the politicians, it must be. Or maybe it's Father Christmas or Jack Frost or whoever. But maybe it was Bigfoot. Who knows? It's, you know, you certainly can't blame the people whose job it is to vote on this in Parliament. Oh no, heaven forfend, it's certainly not on them. This next clip I'm going to show you from Channel 4 just goes to show how people feel about the UK's complicity in this interview. This brief clip I'm going to show you now.
Do you think, though, that the diplomacy matches the urgency of the situation on the ground right now?
Clearly not. I mean, if you look at the number of vetoes from the US that we have seen so far, it's not just now that we need a ceasefire. This is not a new essential step. This is something that has been going on for months. We need it as soon as possible, but it should have been done months ago. And I would add, it's not just about talking, it's now about doing. If you are enabling this conflict through finance, through the provision of weapons which are being used to kill and bombard civilians, you yourselves are complicit in this conflict.
So will you spell that out for us? Do you mean the US and the UK supplying arms to Israel, for instance?
Yes, anybody that is supplying arms to Israel that is being used in this conflict, which is indiscriminately killing civilians, you are complicit in this conflict.
He's absolutely right there. And that brief interview. And it's very easy to criticise other countries, you know, for being complicit in these things. When this is happening in your name, it just makes it even worse. It makes it so much worse. It almost makes you ashamed to be where you're from, to see the country acting in this way. It really does. There could be some severe legal ramifications from this, as there should be. Unfortunately, that's not always the way it goes. We know that people like Tony Blair, for example, should have been in The Hague a long time ago for his complicity in war crimes in Iraq, of course. But if this was a just world, then we'd certainly be seeing that. We'd be seeing Netanyahu up in The Hague. We'd be seeing Rishi Sunak up in The Hague. They're all complicit and they're all responsible. Yep, solidarity to you too, Beesmonk. Great to see you here tonight. Just got a couple more tidbits for you as well. That's I'll just leave that there about the UK complicity. I know I've been on about that quite a bit on tonight's live stream. I'm sure that we all feel a similar way here on the stream about that as well. Just want to address something else here in the UK. About the doctors' strikes. The junior doctors are set to strike again. And obviously this is over wages of pay dispute. 98% of members of the British Medical Association voted to back further walks out with a turnout of 62%. That's pretty impressive. Very clear vote there, 98%. £15 an hour is not a fair wage for a junior doctor. Of course not. Of course not. Well, Keir Starmer, for one, won't even call for £15 an hour minimum wage wholesale across the board, let alone for doctors, junior doctors. So the vote result means the union has a strike mandate for a further 6 months. 2/3 of junior doctors are members of the British Medical Association, it points out as well. Junior Doctors Committee co-chairs Dr. Robert Lawrenson and Dr. Vivek Trivedi said it's now been a year since they began strike action. That's a year of too many strikes. The government believed it could ignore, delay and offer excuses long enough that we would simply give up. We asked the Health Secretary to come forward as soon as possible with a new offer and make sure not a single further strike day need be called. The Department for Health and Social Care described the results as disappointing and said the British Medical Association needs to come back to the negotiating table with reasonable expectations so a fair deal could be found for the NHS doctors and patients. Of course, just demanding fair pay is perfectly reasonable. Like with many other strikes, the Tories have simply condemned the whole concept of striking, attempted to vilify people who are choosing to go and picket, which of course is a pathetic response. They've said that further strikes will impede the progress being made in tackling the hospital backlog. Now, when you consider that you have to study for several years to become a junior doctor, many of them leave university, of course, with huge amounts of debts in terms of student loans, and then to be offered a pittance of pay, it's hardly any wonder why there are so many empty job vacancies in the NHS not being filled. The financial incentives just aren't there. It's also part of the further decimation of the NHS itself, because things like this are done to deliberately harm the NHS so that the Tories and private medical firms can claim that it's failing in order to move our great NHS across from publicly owned institution to a privately owned one, and similar structure that they have to the insurance-based system in America, which is of course awful, and you hear such terrible cases coming from over there. People are bankrupted people who were earning quite, the so-called American middle class, that is in the American sense, who've had their entire lives ruined just by having a heart bypass. People worried to actually go to the doctor to try and look after themselves medical problems because they're too worried about the bills. You could be having a baby and you get charged thousands of dollars just to have an ambulance called out to you. Just a couple more bits from the article. Junior doctors received a pay rise averaging nearly 9% this financial year. Well, that's what the BBC say, but when you look at these things in real terms, when you consider inflation and things such as this, it's how the price rises are relative to these sort of things. So that's the graph. The British Medical Association wants a 35% pay increase to make up for what it says is 15 years of below inflation pay rises. So that's obviously a lot higher than the 9% that's been put out so far, or certainly higher than anything that the Tories will have offered in negotiations. But like this says, there haven't been any formal talks since December last year, so that's a good few months ago. Now, the BMA is boycotting the peer review process for next year by refusing to provide evidence to the independent peer review body, which makes recommendations on a pay rise. Junior doctors in Wales and Northern Ireland are also involved in the strike action. Meanwhile, consultants in England are voting on whether to accept a revised pay offer from ministers after putting their strike action on pause. More than 1.4 million operations and appointments in total have been cancelled because of strike action by health workers, including doctors, nurses and other healthcare professionals, since December 2022. Now, this is a BBC article, but this just could have been written by the Tory press office. As far as I'm concerned, they seem to be very happy to go along with the Tory narrative that people shouldn't have the legitimate right to strike and protest. Protests are disruptive. How many times do we have to say it? It's just part of the nature. People have power within themselves to bring entire industries to its knees with strikes. That includes the NHS and other industries. They are the workers. It's their right to do so. They should own the means of production anyway, as far as I'm concerned. They shouldn't have to go cap in hand to the government to ask for more money. Just finally, Saffron Cordery of NHS providers, which represents hospital managers, said the result of the ballot marked another worrying escalation of the dispute. She urged both sides to find a solution, adding further strikes would inevitably lead to more disruption of patient care. Well, just pay them. Just pay them. How can we have an NHS that we can be proud of if it's not fully staffed and doctors and nurses are paid the decent wage that they deserve? I'm sure everybody listening to this stream who's from the UK has benefited from the NHS during their lives, and it's an institution that certainly needs preserving. So I'm just having a quick look at the chat. Beesmonk, thanks for pointing that out to us. It says if anyone's interested, there'll be a demonstration at Elbit Systems on Tuesday near Birmingham. They've been doing it for the last 10 years. Yeah, of course, Elbit have got manufacturing factories here in the northwest as well. There's one just near the Rochdale and Oldham area as well that's been subject to protests. But of course, yeah, please do keep that up if you can get down to any of those protests and demonstrations. It's very important to hit the war machine, hit the war industry in the UK, where these contributions are being made. Even if we're just supplying parts of weapons, that still makes us complicit as well, of course, and we need to do everything that we can to make sure that things like this aren't being done in our name. So yeah, we need to bring systems like Elbit down, really. Absolutely. Thanks a lot for pointing that out, Bees Monk. Okay, we've been going for just over 90 minutes now. Got a comedy clip to see us out, and then we'll be coming to the outro for the show. Thanks a lot for joining us. Please do stick with us to the end. We've just got one more clip to show you from Larry and Paul. If this hasn't come across, if you've not seen this or come across it in the last week or so, pretty funny clip. Do give them a follow as well.
Welcome to Broken News. A win for campaigners, as those who have repeatedly said they just want their country back are to finally get it. As of midnight on December the 31st, new laws will come into force that will reset the UK to the 1st of January 1970. Our reporter is on hand to tell us what to expect.
PE teachers and priests who are almost certainly pedos, wolf whistling at big-titted birds, overt racism, sitcoms where the gay characters are written as big mincers who want to bomb anything that moves, and cars that have all the structural integrity of a big egg. Just some of the things returning to Britain after much campaigning by pink-cheeked, thick-necked twats. This government pamphlet explains all the changes. The information can't be emailed or put on social media because the entire UK internet is in the process of being shut down. There'll be just one TV channel playing only the black and white minstrel show. Vegetables will be boiled until they taste like farts, and there'll be 3 types of beer available: warm, shit, and warm and shit. Smallpox will make a comeback along with TB and tetanus. And it won't just be diseases having an impact on your physical health. Teachers will be allowed to beat you in the week, your dad will beat you on a Saturday, and a priest will beat you off on Sundays. Wallpaper will only be available with big, massive flowers on it or weird geometric patterns that induce migraines. And the only paints available at Do It All will be government-issued brown, orange and avocado, the colours of the new Union flag. It's also been confirmed that everyone will be smoking everywhere all the time. Professional sports people will have to play in their underpants if they forget their kit. And the rules of football will change to allow angry little Scottish midfielders to break more legs. Some things won't change. No dentist appointments will be available. Police will beat 7 shades of shit out of anyone caught protesting. And right-wing fascists will have disproportionate influence on national political discourse. Back to you.
What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You sleep tight, sugar tits.
Oh, yeah, really great clip there from Larry and Paul. Ironically, just quickly touch on this whole flag thing. He pointed out the colours of the Union flag have been changed to those drab 70s colours, and then of course we had this thing yesterday with the thing over the England shirts. Just to quickly touch on that for my 2 cents on that situation. It's of course pathetic to see these right-wing flag shaggers coming out and try and act as though their lives have been ruined because the flag on the back of a collar had been changed slightly. The official St. George's flag hasn't changed at all. Of course, it's just a ludicrous overreaction from these man-children. Worth pointing out as well that they use different coloured flags on athletes at the 2012 Olympics, tracksuits, etc., with these different shades of white and blue. So it's not the first time that the Union Jack or St. George's flag has been altered to sort of suit a specific event or to show solidarity with the cause. So that's just kind of strange that those two things have come together at the same time. And yeah, Martin Arnold, thanks a lot for joining us. Thanks a lot for coming into the chat and showing some love. You watching Helena's stream? All streams running simultaneously. Yeah, I've asked this before if might be a suitable thing to do to move the time of this stream. I do follow Helena's No Justice stream as well as other streams. Some of them do have content out on Sunday nights as well. Might be able to be a bit flexible on time, so let us know in the comments. Since the channel started doing a live stream, it's always been on Sundays at 7 o'clock, of course, but if that is clashing with other streams, we might consider moving the time around shortly. Let us know what you think about that in the chat or in the comments as well. Thanks a lot for spreading the love and showing your support on our stream as well. And thanks for joining us, whether you're watching us live or on a replay. Just a final reminder to consider joining the channel. If you're a regular viewer, that's a great way to help support us. There's some great perks, including static emojis, exclusive videos, exclusive live streams for members only as well. Please do check out the perks. You can help to support the channel from just 99 pence. Or if you'd like to make a one-off contribution, please do check out our Buy Me a Coffee page. There should be links in the channel description, as well as the description for this stream as well. If you'd like to make a one-off contribution, much appreciated also. Alright, so that's just about it for the stream. A final thanks for being here tonight. We'll be back, of course, with PMQs on Wednesday. That will be the next public live stream, and we're hopefully going to be having some exclusive members-only live streams between now and then as well. Do check that out, and if you've not seen any of our recent content, please do give it a watch. It really helps us out with the algorithm as well. You're all fantastic people. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight on the My Left Eye live stream. And until next time, take care everybody. We'll be seeing you soon.